about using one brush. I figured we'd want to do at least one project this week after all of this speak about supplies. And so I'm going to just do a really quick one. This is just to loosen you up if you're brand new to watercolors. And I'm going to start with the Winsor Newton little cold press kit. Again, it's just a quick way to do it. And small enough so that we can do this fairly quickly in this size. And this is the one with the perforated edges. I actually got some paint on the edge of it here. I'm not worried about it. Not even going to tape this one up, okay? We just want to get used to a simple brush like a wash brush. So I'm just going to use my 1/2 inch wash. If you have 3/4 inch, if you have a 1 inch, whatever you want to try. And in your paper, if it's a little bit bigger, that's okay too. And for paints, we're just going to work out of this pan paint set. So you can see they're all very dry right now. If I have a spray bottle, usually I give it a little spritz. If I don't, I just drop a little bit of water in each one of these. I'm probably not going to use all of these colors, but we'll put a drop of water in each one anyway, just in case, and that way it's ready to go. Okay, and I'm going to set that down. I think we're just going to show, let's see, we might as well do somewhat of a seascape, and I'm going to try a little purpley color. Now, I've actually replaced the green in this one, and I've replaced the red in this one, and the blue. And I cannot remember what exact color I switched in here, so it might not be the exact colors that come in a kit if you have this kit. All I did was squeeze the two paints right in here and just let them harden. So let's see what we have for blue here. I think this is ultramarine blue, and it might have a little bit of something else in there. That's pretty close to a pure blue. So you can see I've got a puddle going. And what I did, you noticed I wet my brush first. And the reason I do that is because if I didn't, see all that paint that's in there right now? If I were to take a dry brush and just start mixing in here, it's going to take all that water that I put in here and just suck it up into the brush. So make sure you wet your brush first and you'll get a nice puddle. So if I continue to mix and wet, you can see I can get a lovely amount of color here with using the pan paints. So let's rinse this off. Now I should have 2 cups of water here, but I have 1, but we're going to make this quick. I'm going to grab some of that alizarin crimson. So you can see this blue is fairly dark. It's kind of on the purplish side a little bit. It's not a real bright blue. So we're going to see what we get for a color when we mix these two together. And you can see I'm going in here, I'm rinsing those colors off. I'll put a little bit of this red into here. And then rinse again. And then we're going to grab a little bit of this blue. So I have easily made a nice light shade of purple. So I have my colors mixed. I don't have a lot of purple in there, but we're just going to go with a very light wash. And I'm going to, first of all, put my glasses on so I can see much better. And I'm going to go in with just some water. Now you can't see where I've put this water and where I haven't. I'm going to fill this whole page in. And even though my water is colored here a little bit, it's light purple, you can see that you're not seeing any light purple on this paper. Let's see if I can reactivate some of this blue over here that's on the side. This is me being messy. So I can get it activated a little bit, but we're just going to paint right over that. So my paper is nice and white. You can see it's curling slightly. This is the 140-pound cold press paper that I'm using. I'm going to get that all on the edge there and go back into this light purple. And because I already have water down in here, see how light that is? A very, very light shade. So I'm just skipping some of those areas. We're going to keep this one very light. Let's just do some blue water down below that. Again, my paper is very wet. We can blend some of that in the middle. Like a little hair there. That came from my brush. And I'm using a synthetic brush. This is by Sapphire Robert Simpson. And this is one of the ones that I used forever. So I have a nice little wash in here. And it's very, very light. I've got a lot of sheen on here because it's wet. So I'm just going to take my blow dryer, and blow dryer or heat tool works great. I use my heat tool a lot just because I don't have the patience to wait, especially when I'm doing classes. I'm going to dry that. And I apologize for the noise, but I just wanted to leave this as live. So I wanted to let you see how long it actually takes for me to dry this paper. So feel free if you want to just kind of skip ahead of this part and see the time from start to finish, just so you have an idea of the length of time, or feel free to just listen to the sound of the lovely blow dryer. Okay, so that's completely dry. You can see that's starting to curl up a little bit. And if I touch the back of my hand, this is nice and dry. It's not cool to the touch or anything, so I know that it's completely dry. Now, because this layer is dry, I can actually go back in now and paint something else. So let's just pretend there's like a little island in here. I'm going to use some of this yellow ochre. Ochre is the stuff you eat. Oops, I don't want to get that in there. So this is one of the problems with smaller pan paints, is because you really only have 3 areas. I hate to waste paint, so I'm just going to use a corner over here. What a lot of people will do is take a napkin or tissue and just wipe out that color, but okay, I'll probably dip into some of those colors again. So I'm going to leave them right there, and you can even let them dry and then reactivate them next time. So let's just do, this is more of a abstract type illusion painting. Little sky in there. So now, because this is dry, both these are dry, when I put that color on top, you can see it's very fresh. There's very sharp lines on here. For the sky, I'm going to go in a little bit darker, but I'm going to add water to this. I'm going to come in close to that. And if I touch it, it's okay. See, that gives out that beautiful little burst of color. And I'm not going to go over that a whole lot because I don't want to reactivate that light purple that's underneath there. But let's just make this a little bit darker. Maybe add a little bit more pigment to it. So as you can see, because I'm adding more pigment, it's going to be a little darker. There's less water in there now. And I have water on here. So if I just tap in a little bit, you can see how it's making this beautiful burst again of clouds, an illusion of some clouds. We mix some of those in here. It's all right. I'm not going over the entire area because I want to leave some of that and just let it dry and see what it's going to do. Now down here, we're going to go in with a little bit more of the purple. Oops, I went from there instead of here. So again, you can see how much darker that purple is in the first one. Now this isn't wet, so let me just show you what's going to happen here. You can see how much brighter that is because it's not wet. A little dry brush maybe. Okay. And then let's give that another dry. have something like this going on. Now I'm going to switch. I'm going to take these and put them aside, the pan paints, and I want to show you some of the tube paints. We're also going to switch brushes just so you can see how the other brush works. Okay, and remember, if we don't have a palette, just grab yourself a little plate and we can mix those up. So I've got my little brush that comes with a Cotman kit now. We're going to do a little detail work. Now this is all dry, so we can do some details. And I'm just going to use 2 different colors here, and I just want you to see the difference between the Cotman pan paints, and these are Cotman, but they're the tube paints. And I want to make sure they're still squishy in there. It means that my cap was on good, I think. We'll see. These ones are a little bit older. So always make sure that your caps are on good and that you've cleaned off the areas whenever you're working with these. I'm going to set that aside. So I'm just going to squirt out a little bit. And then I just smush it, flatten it right out and push. And that will usually give me a very nice clean edge on here. And if I need to, just take a tissue and just wipe off some of the excess. And then I put my cap right back on, making sure that it's leveled so it's not on there crooked. And then I push that paint right up to the edge again, ready to go. Now they do have these little crimps that can come in here, and you can twist these and roll them up so that the paint stays at the top and you don't get a bunch of it down here on the bottom. This one I did not do that with, so let's push that up to the top. And you can see some of the prices on this. It's $2.85 just for this little tube. Sometimes if if they haven't been open for a while, they might be a little bit more difficult to open. So if you can get a nice twist, and see, I left that one was not a clean, put back. Clean put back. I did not put that away correctly. The blue one I did. So I'm going to squeeze that out again, push down, and just pull. And then I'm going to try, see if I can get some of that excess paint off. That's why that was hard to get off. See all that? And all of these little pieces here can actually be activated with water. So just be careful you don't do this on top of your painting. All right, so that's pretty good. There's still a little bit there. And I'm going to, once again, just push that up to the top and fill that in. So now this is an 8 milliliter tube. Both these are, they come in 8, they have 14, and even larger than that, so you can get really big tubes. For watercolor, this is going to last you a really long time. So unless you're doing huge sheets, you really don't have to worry about getting those larger tubes. Now I do get the larger tubes with the gouache just because I use a lot of gouache on my paintings. All right, so I'm going to put that aside. So you can see I have my wet paint in here, and I am not going to use my little brush to mix this just because I want you to see what happens here. And I really put those too close together. But if I pull in, this is Prussian blue, and you can see I've got a big chunk here still. And as I pull that over, I mean, I could fill up this whole area with paint. Look at that. Nice and dark. Add a little more to it. I can make it much more watery. Again, now this is going to be a fairly dark paint. Let's rinse that off. Now I should have my clean water here. Told you I don't do this because I don't have a whole lot of space here when I'm showing you and I'm trying to record. So do as I say, not as I do, right? That's what my mom told me. So I'm going to do the same thing with this one. This color is burnt sienna. So what people tend to do, especially if you've worked with acrylics before, they tend to put a ton of paint on here and then it goes forever. Like you can see I've got this big chunk over here still, and I've got all of this paint here, and I can continue with that. Continuing adding water if I need to make more of it. If I need the color to be darker, I can come over here and grab a little bit more of the pigment. Okay, but there is plenty there for something this small. And again, what happens is when you're working with the tubes, I mean, they go a long way. These will last for a long time too, but as we talked about in the beginning, these are a great way to start when you're first. You don't have to buy all these colors. You know, every one of these tubes, if you're looking at it, you know, $2 to $3 a piece. You don't even know if you like the color, if you're going to use the colors. These are basic colors in here, primary. So you can pretty much make everything with this, except for those really pretty pink colors. But a lot of people get the tube paints, so we want to make sure that you have access to how to use both of those, right? Not that one's worse than the other, really. It's just a preference base. But so you'll end up, you have this plate, you'll end up with this chunk, just like you would in a palette, basically, and this will dry later on and you can reactivate it. So people tend to sometimes waste this type of paint more if it's not actually in a palette of some sort. Let's just grab a little bit of this blue. Now you can see that's quite light. It's very transparent because it's still showing that purple. So I'm going to grab a little bit more of that pigment and get a little bit darker. So this is just an illusion of a rock here. I'm mixing some of that together, making this other great little color. Let's get a little bit more again. Since this is my second layer, my second wash, I'm going to have this a little darker. And the blue, I don't particularly like the blue in that with the purple, so let's add a little bit of that to it. This is part of your color mixing, which we will talk more about next week. So just an illusion, and maybe of a rock back in here. Very abstract. Okay, so that is the difference between the pan paints and the tube paints. And again, this is the student grade. You can also use the professional grade, which are going to be very similar, except for the pigments are usually a little bit more intense. And I think I'm going to, I'd really like a little bit darker. Let's see if we can get more of that pigment. See, I have so much water in here. It's a really nice light wash. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And they just mix. Nice thing about plates is you can get some of your colors to mix. The bad thing about plates is some of the colors will mix when you don't want them to. So some of the palettes will have little dividers in them. And that's why you really want dividers if you don't want those two colors mixing together. I'm just trying to get a darker shade here. So I picked up that little piece of pigment, which I don't want. It's going to be very dark on here. Let's go over here and just do some fine lines. Again, just tapping in. Illusion of some rocks. Give it some, a little bit more definition. This is all wet, so I don't want to touch that too much. So I'm coming down below it a little bit. Same with down here. Because I did not dry that, it's still wet. Okay, so there we have it. Let me just show you in a mat. Let me grab my mat here and just place that right on top. How pretty is that? Real simple. And again, you don't have to think about that too much. This is a great warm-up exercise, but it's a pretty, you know, it's very pretty. If you were to frame that in a nice little white frame or a black frame, it's going to be quite pretty. I'm going to blow dry that. Okay, and then I'm going to take this, and this is where the perforated edges are. So let's just bend that. Just very carefully remove it. So you can see it has a little bit of a curl to it, but once you put a mat in there and you put it on a backer board and you tape that flat, that will flatten that right out. And then always sign your work. So I've got my little Sharpie here. And the other thing is you want to make sure that when you sign your work, it is not going to be covered by the mat. So decide where you're going to mat that. Like if I have a larger mat, can't use that, but the small one I can use. So I think it's going to go right about there. I got my Chasse 2022, and there we go. A quick little easy way, pans versus tubes. And you can see you can use them together, you can use them by themselves, and they pretty much do the same thing with the exception of just as you know how much water that you have to add to them. So first project down. I can't wait to see yours.